All right. Well, here we are, episode number 8 of Distressed Deals Decoded, as my buddy Juan Nicasio likes to call it, Triple D. Even
That's
better
right.
than diners, drive-ins, and dives. Well, this is where real estate problems meet real solutions, brought to you by your friends and partners at Asset Resolution Advisors. Today, we're diving into another issue, as we do every week, about the emerging opportunities for real estate investors, real estate agents, and other professionals in the industry. Today's topic, a very interesting one, the HOA time bomb. When a reverse mortgage, a trust, two foreclosures create a hidden surplus deal on top of everything else. And this was actually a live coaching session with Juan and Steve and one of our members who shall remain nameless so that we'll keep the innocent protected. But think about this. Title said walk away from the deal. The banks did absolutely nothing for years, by the way. The owners were deceased, not very helpful, and yet this dead deal is sitting on a hidden surplus that nobody is claiming. I'd like to introduce my two panelists and partners, Mr. Steve Schiller, the reformed loan servicer, 20 plus years as a default servicing expert, which brings so much value to our company, and Mr. Juan Nicasio, Mr. Acquisition himself, investor extraordinaire, and he's going to be shedding some investor thoughts on this whole process. And myself, Patrick Butler, real estate broker for Asset Resolution Advisors. So, Juan, you brought this deal with one of your coaching clients. Tell us how this whole thing came to pass.
Yeah, one of my uh, big investor client, had brought this deal to me because they said, "Well, I'm looking in my pipeline. There was a deal that we found through their marketing efforts in where they said the title company told them it was a dead deal due to multiple, I think it was multiple ownerships through an HOA foreclosure. And so they were like, hey, we don't know who the original debtor is. We don't have any of those contacts, and the HOA foreclosed on it. So this deal is dead is in essence what came about with that opportunity. So that team, prior to doing some coaching with me and kind of diving into what we are experts here doing, they were like, "Hey, that one rings a bell. Like that deal. What do you guys think about that?" Right? And so um, they, in essence, had walked away from that deal because they were like, hey, there's not much to do because title company, which is, for them, the all be all to their ability to close on deals since they put it under contract with clear and marketable title, which really just means that things need to get cleared up in order for title insurance to be issued, but that title company did not know how to go about it. There was a reverse mortgage on it. There was two HOA foreclosures, and it was just labeled dead. Most investors and that don't have this type of knowledge, they're not really being educated or pouring into this type of distress type of deal because they deal with distress. They just don't deal with this type of distress. Once the title company tells them it's dead, it's pretty much dead. That's where it all lies.
Yep. And we've had this conversation many times. Title companies, we love them. We have to work with them. They provide an invaluable service,
Yeah.
but they don't all have the same level of knowledge of how to clear these hairy deals. You'd hope everybody can do a clean one. When they get a little funky like this, sometimes it pays to have the right title partners, just like the right lender, right? If you need first-time home buyer loans or reverse mortgage, it's not always the same lender. So, Steve,
Mhm.
we always blame the system. Why did the system break the deal in this particular case?
Of course, we have a crazy one on the Ocho, right? Our episode Ocho.
That's right.
Just thought that was funny. So, there are a few things about this that caught me, and when I looked through it, I actually didn't even see the surplus at first, right? I was looking through all the other messy parts of this, which, that's part of why the system doesn't happen. There's so many different different avenues of this deal that it's hard to get mixed up, with what's going on. So, first we have reverse mortgage, right? Which is there's specific rules to that, who can do what, who can transact on the property. Um, they should have foreclosed on the property. I don't know why they didn't, but it just took a while. It's actually pretty typical of HUD when loans get transferred back to HUD, they just take their time. It's a difficult process for the government to foreclose. You got to understand that they have to use the U.S. Attorney's Office, the
Mm.
federal U.S. Attorney's Office to foreclose on these. Um, they're busy. They're busy with other things, not to worry about,
A
mortgage.
house.
Yeah, a house. So essentially that's part of the delay, but they usually get things moving. It just didn't. Um, so that works in the favor of everybody. The interesting part here really is the HOA. Florida's relatively unique with this HOA issue. It doesn't happen in too many other states. Part of it is that HOA is a super lien, which means and there's a lot of people get this mixed up, so I'm going to be careful with how I say this. A super lien means that the HOA gets paid before everybody else.
Mhm.
Their lien, even if the lien comes after the mortgage was taken out, which usually does, is paid first. But when an HOA forecloses, it does not wipe out all the other liens. And it's kind of a weird situation. So when an HOA forecloses, and they do foreclose, they can kick the homeowner out. They kick the occupant out because they essentially purchase the deed. So they get the deed, but they do not wipe out all the mortgage liens. So it's a little bit of a crazy situation. What we see often, pretty often in Florida, is investors go to HOA and they purchase these HOA deeds, if you will,
Mhm.
for a lot of money, thinking they're going to wipe out every other lien. And then when they go
Yes.
to try to transact on the property, all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, there's a reverse mortgage. What I thought the foreclosure wiped it out, and it does.
Correct.
And now they're caught. So this is really interesting of a situation because this happened twice. So
Yes.
so the first time the HOA foreclosed, I think the homeowners were deceased or incapacitated at the time, and this was about 2015. And so obviously they weren't paying taxes, insurance, they probably weren't paying their HOA. So the HOA has the right to foreclose, and they foreclosed. Well, they foreclosed on their deal, and it was a set amount, and that's all they can recoup back. Well, some third party bidder bid $15,000 above that amount.
Yes.
So what happens? What happens? Well, the HOA takes their money, gives the deed to the new person, and what happens to the rest of the money? Well, it sits there as a surplus. The
Mhm.
homeowner can claim it. There's some ways the bank could claim it if they tried, but generally speaking, it's the homeowner who could claim it. They didn't do that.
So
So
that's weird, right? And we don't know why because they're out of the picture.
yeah, so their property was in a
They-
trust. Presumably there were heirs, but I guess I don't know what happened. It does happen. It looks messy. Like around the paperwork, it looks messy. So now you have new buyer one. We're gonna call them new buyer one. New buyer one then takes out a loan, presumably to fix the house, do whatever, rent it out, however it is. Again, this is all subject to the first lien, but
Right.
they're doing this, right? And then all of a sudden they stop paying the HOA, which is another no-no. So they stop paying several years later, and the HOA forecloses again.
Those
And
pesky HOAs.
this time somebody put an offer in that was, I think it was like $75,000 above what the HOA was owed.
Wow.
So there's a
Yes.
$75,000 surplus and a $15,000 surplus, somewhere in that range. So there's now $90,000 sitting there for somebody to claim,
Yes.
which is amazing, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
In a
Um,
dead deal.
no, it's certainly not. So
Yeah.
first, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was
No,
just
I was
trying to
just
say
thinking, what
that,
was
well,
first? Go ahead.
yeah, what was supposed to be a dead deal but it's because obviously, from an investor standpoint, they don't know how to look at those dockets to figure out, hey, is there any outstanding liens on the property? You're going to an HOA auction, and you're thinking you're going to get it for a steal of a deal. That's just from an investor perspective, right? Like if you're not diving deep and you're not really understanding how to navigate through this information, well then yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's why it happened 2 times.
Right. So we've got this situation going on. Um, and the reason, I think you brought up a good point, Juan, is the reason nobody knows what to do is there's just so many moving parts to it, right? So first you have to really
Mm-hmm.
understand HOA foreclosures, surplus, and how that all works. So that's sort of one element. The second element is what do you do with deceased homeowners who might or might not have heirs? And do you or do you not have to go through probate? So that's sort of the second piece that there are a lot of real estate investors who really know what to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
The third piece is, hey, is the bank going to do anything? Are they going to transact on it? Are they just going to foreclose? What are they going to do? That's the third. And then the fourth piece, which I think is really important, is there's opportunity in this for everybody, right? For agents, for investors, for the bank, for
Yes.
everybody, right? So the deal really didn't die. It got orphaned.
Yeah.
Love that. Didn't die, it got orphaned.
Well, let me add something here, guys. It died because the title company cannot get a release of information or a payoff from the bank because the people that they're dealing with, the investor and the now person on record, right, which is this, what is it, buyer two, right?
Yeah.
They have no authorization for the reverse mortgage. So the title company is at a standstill, you see?
Correct. However, I will say, and I'm glad you brought that up, Juan, we have been able to work specifically with reverse mortgages and HUD in a situation
Mhm.
like that with the deed holder. So let me be
Mm,
very specific with it. So the servicer generally will not release information unless you are the note owner, right? Unless you're the one who took out the note, the loan, they generally will not give you anybody authorization unless that person says, yes, you can go look at my financial well-being. Florida is a very unique state because of this HOA. So this buyer too owns the deed because they own the
sure.
deed, they kind of sort of have rights to the property. Not a lot, but a little bit of the rights. And if you're able to navigate it carefully with HUD, it's you have to be skillful at it, but if you can navigate it appropriately, you can get some information out of them so that you can transact on the property, right? They can't deny the deed holder a transaction. There's certain ways to maneuver. You have to be careful, but there are ways to maneuver to get what you need in order to transact. But
Mm.
you have to be very careful and skillful in how you do it.
There's no question about it. And that's some of the things that we see all the time, right? Like in a standard short sale process, like any real estate transaction, if you will, there's steps that you take. But when one of these curveballs comes in, oftentimes the loan servicer's software, which is oftentimes antiquated, could be Equator, could be an offshoot of, and all kinds of stuff talking to each other. They don't have a box for that to click. So they can't go on. They may have to say, look, I'm going to have to escalate this to my manager. And then it goes off into Never Never Land. And that's where having true professionals that have been through these transactions and have the people to talk to that they've done many, many, many deals with, which by the way, those people come and go like revolving doors as well. So let's take a look at why this is actually a gold mine. Now, Steve, you had mentioned, we were talking earlier about this deal, and I said, well, if there's so many pieces to the puzzle here and there are reverse mortgages, is that surplus really an opportunity for somebody? Can that money be retained by somebody in the transaction? And before we even get to that, I think you said it. This is a great listing opportunity for a real estate agent, right? I mean, it's a hairy deal, but at the end of the day, the bank pays 6% commissions, and that gets shared however the deal is structured that way. But as far as the surplus, any way somebody could get their hands on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Both sides of it, right? So, from the surplus, again, this is, this is a I look at this as a classic deal that is good for both real estate investors to learn and real estate agents to learn. They're not many of those we come across. This is one that really fits both buckets. I mean, clearly, right? So from the real estate investor, a skilled investor, even people who are just getting into it, this is a really good opportunity, right? Is it's finding the correct people, working with some getting some legal help, right? You're going to need a little bit of legal help to understand who has the right to get the surplus and whatnot. And there are some laws in Florida that protect the homeowners for a certain amount. So that's definitely one thing I would always recommend is work with a very competent attorney who understands this area of HOA liens. But the surplus, absolutely working with the right people can be claimed. So there's money right off the bat without having to sell or do anything. There's money sitting there, right? For somebody
Yep.
Yeah.
to earn. So
So,
that's one.
yep, go ahead.
Part two, from an agent standpoint, which I think we've talked a lot about over the years, and I think is interesting here because we were looking at it going, a lot of agents specialize in probate, or they look at probate listings or try to get probate listings, and it's something that's very common even among real estate investors too. A probate listing, when you look at the data, it's like, oh my God, here's a probate. It's been around forever. There might have been a trust. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I'm just not going to even try to list this. But you know, yes, it's messy, but bringing the right people again to the table can really yield something great for a real estate agent, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think that the agent has to do a lot of initial work other than here's the deal, I found it, and let me find somebody in my investor group who might be willing to take on these items, right? And
Yep.
again, the key for both the investor and the real estate agents, recognizing there's a problem, identifying what the strategies for that are, and then it's really a matter of putting together the people to get it done on the other side. Once everybody gets it done from an agent standpoint, here's the listing that they can earn
Yep.
money.
Not to mention, I believe I heard during a conversation about the same file that that's all the stuff that's under the wrapper of the existing liens and surplus, et cetera. However, the property itself, from what I understand, as repaired value in the 500s, maybe as is value in the
Yes.
300s or something, there's an opportunity there. Now, the investor that brought it, I don't think was a fix and flipper. I don't think they were buying to hold, fix and flip. I think they want to kind of wholesale it, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Their
So
intent was to wholesale.
yeah, so it's still an opportunity for an investor. So I think the moral to the story here is, kids, is that it's great to triage these deals early and thoroughly so that we all know
Yeah.
what the success path looks like. How does this deal need to go down and go after the right market for that? I mean, part of the question then, Steve, is how do these deals even show up in probate, right? So if you're a probate specialist, you're looking for estates with no personal representative. So that's just out there in Neverland, right? Is that
Yeah, I
accurate?
mean that's definitely one way to do it, right? If you come across probate, I mean, you're looking at this, you're a lot of people look at it and say, oh, there must be no representative. This has been sitting around. I mean, like I said, the HOA foreclosed in 2015, so it's presumed. I don't know when the home original owners were deceased, but I mean, you're looking at something 10, 11 years ago. So
Yeah.
and nobody's popped up since then. And that I think is a great example of somebody going through data and finding, oh, there must be an opportunity here. Let me
Yeah.
look. It is a good way to look to find opportunities.
And this one happens to be a short sale, but there are many cases where if there's no heirs around or that nobody's aware of, oftentimes there's equity in these properties, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
just a little bit of work, a little bit of curative. And as we mentioned earlier, the title companies may or may not be suited to do that. So, the equity eventually dissipates on these things. So the other piece, and we brought up, was why the as repaired value versus the as is value is so important. Whenever we're looking at these deals, is to understand where there can be margin. I know a lot of investors that don't want to own properties. They want to get in and get out, and that's a strategy, and that's a great strategy. There are others that live to do the repairs. That's what there's TV shows about that, for crying out loud, that we watch on HGTV all the time. So, it's a different level of investor, a different level of risk. And then last but not least, why are the HOA buyers such motivated sellers? I mean, I
Well,
think the bottom line, yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
You
I was gonna say in this instance, they made a mistake, right? They
Yeah.
they overpaid. They didn't do their homework or didn't understand what was going on. They overpaid for a property, right? I've seen a lot of people who say, well, I paid 20 grand, bought the deed, and then I was able to, slap some paint, put some carpet down for 10 grand, and then I went and sold it and I, flipped the property for, 30, 40, $50,000 profit. That happens. There are deals like that. This
Mhm.
this is sort of in that realm to some degree. I think that it just seems like the person who purchased the HOA deed just got in over their head, right? So you have
hmm
a
Yes.
$300,000 property, probably needs 75 to $100,000 worth of work. They already spent 90,000 or so on the deed. So, when you're now putting up 200 grand on a $300,000 property, the RVs in the 500s, your margins aren't as great as you might want them to be, right? They're not there. So, again, from an agent standpoint, from a real estate investor standpoint, these are great targets. You had somebody who overpaid,
Mhm.
got in over their head a little bit, and they need out, right? They need some type of exit. From a real estate agent standpoint, it's, hey, investor, you bought this property. I realize that you might not profit what you thought. Let's limit the damage, not
Yeah,
go to foreclosure again, and let's figure out how we can partner with somebody, right? There are business opportunities between this person and maybe a fix and flipper who want to get the deal done, right? Because they still own the deed. There might be some outcomes between them, non-real estate transaction, deal transaction that could happen. And then from a real estate side, again, there's the real estate agent can list the property, put the people together. So there's so many avenues from a business standpoint on this for everybody to make money, not to mention what's sitting out there on the surplus. So
right.
they're just
Right.
like, this is one of those that there are different levels to stack some wins for everybody across the board and really make it a win-win-win across for everybody.
Indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, that is specifically why, in addition to doing this business as asset resolution advisors, we launched our school community to bring in like-minded people, to have think tanks, to have investor think tanks, agent think tanks, other professionals in the industry be able to bounce things off of each other. And there is a nominal investment to be part of that community. But I heard one person paid $15,000 on this deal for an HOA deed and disappeared off the face of the earth, and another one spent $75,000 and got foreclosed on again. A few bucks for a membership or even the VIP program is well worth it to get the triage done early and quite frankly often if you've got more deals than just one that you're looking at. So let's do a little bit of a round robin. So we've learned today that messy isn't necessarily dangerous. It's profitable when you know what you're doing. So Juan, what are some takeaways, couple takeaways that we can provide for agents and even the investors?
Well, I've always lived by the successes on the other side of fear. So I don't stop at messy deals. I actually welcome messy deals because those are opportunities that no one's really chasing. And just like diagnosis, let's say it's something pretty major, you typically would go get a second opinion, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I would treat these type of deals where someone tells you no, it's not doable. I would want to go to maybe other professionals or other um, people that have experience in these type of distress deals and get a second or even third opinion because like just like this example, there's plenty of meat on the bone. Even at the surface level, there's so much layer of opportunity in this one deal. And so, me personally, looking at I much rather do these type of deals. I'm not out there bidding on an auction with other people. I'm not calling on homeowners that have 10 other phone calls or 100 other phone calls from their opportunity. I much rather go into the messy deals, the ones that have been dormant for a long time, and say, why? What is going on with this house? And how can I crack the code? How can I decode, right, this distressed asset? Because that's where the opportunity lies, right? Um, just look where everyone else, right, isn't is literally one of the best pathway to creating very large margins. So I understand from an investor standpoint, you want to get in and you want to get out. Totally respectable. I think, obviously there's a market for everyone. And I know that some of this does take time, but what I've seen from my experience is that that one messy deal sometimes is either double or even triple the profit of me doing the one deal.
Mhm.
Understand? So I much rather work on this deal for the next, call it 3 months, 6 months, heck, even 12 months if it's going to yield me three times the margin. That's one thing. And then bringing the file to asset resolution advisors before walking away from the deal is probably the smartest thing that you can do. Because we will absolutely diagnose that opportunity and tell you if it's, we're that second opinion doctor, right? And let you know, hey, there is absolutely nothing here, right? Or, hey, there is a pathway and this is where it's going to lead. And now you can make an educated decision. Hey, do I pursue this as an investor and keep working on this deal? Or is this something that I should just pass on? It doesn't really make too much sense for me. So, those are my takeaways when it comes to these really hairy, messy opportunities.
So the one thing I took away from Juan's takeaways is that no doesn't necessarily mean no. That's a total
Not right
paradigm
now,
shift I've been
right?
taught. All right,
Yeah,
Steve, what are
we're
some of
gonna
your
keep digging.
takeaways?
Well, first off, um, you know, don't be afraid of what the servicers are or not doing, right? They're not necessarily, they don't have all the answers either. Um,
Mm,
and there is a pathway to a solution, even though the original note, the homeowners are dead, and can't transact on it, but there is a pathway to this. So I think that's important for everybody to understand. This the second thing, which I think is really, really important, is you have to have a really good understanding of how liens work, right? Each
Mhm.
state is a little bit different. HOAs, super priority liens, reverse mortgages. So getting an understanding of how those all work and how they fit together is such an important piece to as you're going through leads and opportunities.
mm,
It's really a big reason why we started the school community in asset resolution was we get a lot of questions about it and rather than keeping the knowledge internal and saying, "Hey, I'm just going to do this for myself," the goal for us was, look, come into the community. It is a nominal fee for what you get out of this, and by coming into the community, you ask these type of questions. Hey, I've got a question. Here's a lien. What does this mean? How does it work in this state? So on and so forth. And we walk you through it, right? We educate you on how it works. That's
mm,
why I think that the school community is there and why it's so important. And to your point earlier, Patrick, agents and investors, it's a community bringing everybody together. Hey, agent, I found a probate. I need some investors who want to dig into the surplus, blah, blah, right? It's just that's what the community is about.
Yep.
That's the idea. We're the solution partner here, right? Of bringing the groups together, the banks, the title companies, everybody who have been out there trying to figure, they're not there to provide the solution. They're there to do one thing specific, and that didn't seem to work out in this case. And that's what I leave with this deal.
Very nice. And, as always, I mean, we just touched on a couple things, but here at Asset Resolution Advisors, we deal with them all. Look at the gray hairs, folks. We've been doing this for a long time. So whether it's HOA issues, UCC liens that we finally cracked the code on, pre-foreclosure short sale, they're all things that have solutions to success. And by the way, there are those that just flat out don't. If your second opinion from us is don't do it, don't do it. It's a dead deal. I can assure you of that. We look at it from every single angle. So we will give you the playbook, as Steve mentioned. If you want to do it yourself, we'll train you to do it. God bless you. If you want us to do it as your
Yes.
outsource partner, we've got solutions for that as well. Basically, if you got a deal that looks like it's going to be trouble or you think it's dead, give us a shout. Let us take a peek at it, and we can help you determine whether there's gold in them thar hills. Gentlemen, anything else for the good of the order?
No, just to really dive in, I would say, for this particular experience, as we just went through, there are so many people that benefit through it. The person that, made a mistake in buying that HOA will have a final resolution because they didn't have one before. The heirs or the people that passed away or finally potentially would be out of that mortgage. We'll figure out a way to kind of clear that out, whether it be a short sale, what have you. And then the investor themselves already have margin in the deal, significant margin, at least 40, $50,000 or something like that on that deal alone. And the real estate agents that are going to be involved in that case. And the HOA got paid as well. So it comes full circle. I say, look at it from that lens and tap into, our school community because there is absolute gold in what we are able to educate you on and obviously provide for you as a service.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I thank you for your time. We're going to end this recording at the 32-minute mark, and we'll see you guys next week.